Hey guys, Dom here, and today, as the Frostspark collection is just over a year old now, I thought I'd go through it and kind of say which cards I think are still useful and relevant in current meta and my personal opinions of these cards. Before we go any further in this video, if you do want to support my content, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, helps me feel better about myself as well. And without that, let's have a look at some of these cards. Starting off with Sword of the Inferno, this is an equip card which is +2 to attack, and when you summon it, it will make the wielder of the card damage itself by 2, and you can choose one other creature and also damage that card by 2. So this has kind of a few cool little combos you can do with it, with certain types of cards, and it's not too bad overall, but it does kind of need to fit in with those other kind of playstyles. One would be, say, Drain, where you could kind of hit your own unit. Yes, that will do 2 damage. Hit another unit, gain another 2, and that's quite nice for just getting a bit of health back. Or another one would be Slay, because if this does actually kill a creature, it sets off the Slay ability, and obviously if you've just summoned a card that turn, that can allow you to activate its Slay turn 1. And the final one would be creatures like Fearless Northlander, who want to get hit to buff itself, or cards of a last gasp, because you might end up killing your own unit and damaging your opponent to have some other bonus. So overall, it is quite a good card. I quite like it, but it is very, very much made for decks which need it, instead of just an all-round good card. Moving on to Willpower, the rare we have is called Harmony, and is a Prophecy 2 cost, which, when used, gives all enemy creatures -2 attack until the start of your next turn. So this is quite nice, especially to use on your turn, because it means your opponent can't use their cards properly on their turn. And as it's a prophecy, obviously, it does mean if they are really hammering you and you luck out, you can obviously snap back at them and slow down them for a turn. Obviously, this will also mean that you can kill enemy units with your weaker units, which you want to keep around, say just as like Fighters Guild Recruit, for instance, because that's got lethal and is quite low cost. Or what you could do is, if your opponent's filled out their entire field with a bunch of really crappy units, you just play Harmony with your Bloody Hand Chef on the field, and then it gains what, 16 extra attack? It's not bad, I'd take that. And means with the correct field presence that you can set up a very, very powerful OTK. So overall, I'd say Harmony, it does have some cool little tricks with it, and it's good for slowing down your opponent, but in aggro matches you can't really get around it, because they'll just summon new units which won't be debuffed. Over in Endurance, we have Karthspire Scout, which is a 1-cost 1/1 last gasp. Draw a card and increase its cost by 1. So lots of 1s there, which basically is a way of saying this is a nice card to open with, as it's getting you some board presence and allows you to have some draw power later down the line. Yes, it will be increasing the cost of your next card that you draw, but that doesn't really matter in most scenarios. I mean, obviously there will be times where it is kind of annoying, but it's not going to happen every single time. And it does have some cool combos it can do, say with Necron Mastermind, which will set off its last gasp early, or it's just a nice card to sacrifice for abilities like Betray, because you don't want to have to risk one of your bigger units, and it does give you something as a reward for doing that. Over in Intelligence is what I believe is the worst card of the set, and that is a Destruction Tutor, because this is a 5-cost with a 3/5 body, which isn't too good for a 5-cost with a mediocre effect, which is your actions that deal damage cost 2 less. And the reason why this effect isn't too good is because there are 33 damage cards in the game, 6 of which only cost 0 or 1, so this effect is redundant. 6 of which are prophecies, so you're usually going to be playing them as prophecies, and 2 of them reduce the cost through other means, such as Soul Burst. So yeah, it does have its use technically, but I feel like you'd be better off without it and going with something else. Probably the card I've used the most in the set, Torval Extortionist. This is a 5-cost 7/5 which has Slay, gain Magicka this turn equal to the slain creature's cost, and because it's got such a high attack, it's actually really flipping good, especially if you pair it with the correct cards such as Brotherhood Sanctuary, Squish the Wimpy, and possibly even Sword of the Inferno because of, you know, getting that Slay ability off. Meaning, if you do manage to like kill something which is like an 8 cost, you can gain 8 extra Magicka in one turn. And obviously, I don't know how that would work with, say, Martin Septim, but that might trigger him if you hit 30. And it would be so crazy, like the amount of Magicka that you can stack and just let out in the correct combos with this card. So I think if you're running a Slay deck, this is probably a must-have, especially if you've got a lot of action battle cards. Our first epic of the video is Green-Pact Ambusher, a 2-cost 4/1 Prophecy and Guard, which at the end of your opponent's turn, if they have a full lane and this card's in your hand, you can just slap it in that lane. When I first saw this, I thought, nah, it's lame, but it is actually quite nice because not only is it a Prophecy, it's also got that ability, so if your opponent has a full lane and it's in your hand, it pretty much has charge, which on a card with 4 power does mean in certain situations you do have an easy shot at just a little bit of removal against your opponent, which is really nice. And yeah, don't really know what else to say about it. It's a nice card, but obviously it is very weak health wise, and you need to watch out for that. Over in Willpower we have Apex Wolf, which is a 6-cost 4/4 with Breakthrough and Drain, and when it dies, you draw the top creature of your deck, and it also gets Breakthrough and Drain. This probably has to be my joint favourite epic of this set, just because it gives you draw power, it has Drain, it's got Breakthrough, it's got a lot on it, and when it dies, it actually puts you in a nice situation as well, giving you an extra card, which has 2 new keywords to kind of allow you to be a bit more flexible with that. See, like with this card and Green-Pact Ambusher, you may notice I'm not showing other cards that it works with, just because I think that these cards are so nice that they work in almost every deck, and it doesn't need to kind of be pushed in such a direction for you to kind of make it work properly. So yeah, I'd say this is a really nice card for certain, maybe Healy Willpower decks. Next in Endurance we have Death Hound, which is a 5-cost 6/6, which is a beast and a vampire, has guard, and its power is always equal to its health until silenced, of course. That's its biggest issue, I'd say, but also the reason why it can be such a good card. So things you'd want to give this card would be Regenerate or just a bloody hell lots of health. So cards like Enchanted Plate and Imperial Armor, they're really nice, and there's that Regenerate 1/3 feather thing, I can't remember what it's called exactly, but that's also really good for this card. And the reason why I'd say that this actually all works well together is because all the cards which work with this and help buff it are all in Endurance, so it doesn't force you to play another attribute just to play this card nicely. So again, with the rest of the epics, it's pretty good, but I'd say out of the ones I've reviewed so far, it's possibly the worst. So Piercing Twilight has got to be my other joint favourite epic card in the set, because it's a 4-cost 4/4, so they're easy stats to remember, it's got guard, and when it's summoned, you choose a card in your opponent's discard pile and banish every single one of them from your opponent's discard pile and their deck. Now, in the latest gauntlets, I've been using this card as much as I can, if possible, just because it's so good at kind of bleeding out your opponent's deck of their best cards, especially if you're set up against Control and they've played one Piercing Javelin. It's nice just to rod out the others while you can. And that being said, it works so well with Oblivion Gates, now that they're in the game as well, that Piercing Twilights can get so strong in the correct Daedra deck that I'd say it's always worthwhile trying to get your Oblivion Gate deck to include Intelligence because of this card and some of the synergy that you can pull off with it. So yeah, I'd say definitely, if you're running Intelligence and you hate your opponent's deck, use this. Finally, the epic in Agility we have is Shadowmarking, which allows you to look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose one to put in your opponent's hand and you get to keep the other 2. See, depending on what you draw, obviously depends on how good this card is. If you draw your best 2 cards in your deck and, I don't know, your turn 1 Vardvark experiment or something really silly and goofy, it's just really nice and basically gives you a +2 on your opponent. But unfortunately, I'd say this card hasn't aged too well, especially with ones like Spoils of War being able to become so cheap and just safely draw you 2 cards and not give out parts of your deck to your opponent. And now with Fresh Start just giving you all 3, I'd say Shadowmarking has fallen behind in being a good and trendy card, I'm afraid. And finally, we have the majestic Wilds Incarnate. The only neutral and the only legendary of the set. This is a 7 cost, 5/6 guard, which when summoned gives you 1 card if you have 4 runes, and 2 cards if you have all 5 still intact. So, in a Magicka boosting deck, this is really nice because you summon it quickly and you're like, boom, I've just got more cards than you. Or in decks where you're just kind of keeping your opponent away from your face and distracting them, this is also really nice for the extra draw power. However, if your runes have been shattered, it's a mediocre guard at best, and it's not even like a type of card, because it's a beast which will get buffed by that much that you're likely to be running. So I'd say if you've made a deck around this, it's going to be really good, but otherwise it's mediocre. And that's going to do it. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if any of my controversial opinions annoyed you, well, please let me know in the comments. I need to know how to be less annoying. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.